You are listening to 95.7 FM WELT, Fort Wayne, Radioactive. The opinions and views expressed in this show are that of the hosts and guests only. They do not represent those of FreeThought Fort Wayne, Secular Fort Wayne, WELT, or any other organization. How can I live in society if I don't believe in God? How can I understand the world around me without religion? What can I do to make the world a better place? Where did we come from? How can I be a moral person? These are just some of the profound questions we as humans have pondered for millennia. Join us as we ponder these questions free from the ideologies of religion and superstition. Welcome to the Hoosier Humanist Hour, where we explore science, religion, culture, ethics, and community from the humanist perspective. I'm your host Andrew, and this is episode 2 of the Hoosier Humanist Hour. We are still in the testing the waters phase, and the format is not set in stone. This episode consists of a conversation between members of the show about articles that were posted to the FreeThought Fort Wayne Facebook page. So without further delay, here's Drake, V, Chris, D, and myself.
All right, guys, so there was a great new discovery in the science field this week. They discovered, or they were able to record for the first time, gravitational waves. And it kind of went all over my head. Would anyone be able to explain kind of layman's terms what happened and what was found and why this is significant?
Layman's terms is difficult on this one, at least for me.
It's not really that difficult of a concept. We've all heard of electromagnetic waves. This is the same, but with gravity, basically. And what actually surprised me was how short-lived the event was. It only took a couple of seconds, and it apparently was caused by a couple of black holes actually colliding and merging. And for something, when you think about these objects being, tens or hundreds of times the solar mass, and all of a sudden just merging into one, that's kind of the baffling part for me, and that it only took just a few seconds.
Tell me if I'm right here, V. Is this would it be similar? This is a two-dimensional example, but if you throw a pebble in a water and you see the waves go away from the point in which the pebble falls into the water, and then those waves get smaller as they move away. Is that similar to what they are detecting?
I think so. But I guess all waves are kind of similar in that way. Yeah. Yes and no, I guess. I'm not really sure how to explain the differences there.
I think what's interesting too, I think that might be similar to what it is, but I'm not sure, is that we're looking at black holes that I believe are 5 billion light years away.
A couple, I think these were 1.3 billion light years away.
Still sounds like a long way.
Yeah, it is. And I guess the masses were something like 29 and 36 times the mass of the sun. And I guess when they merge, when that happens, there's a huge release of energy, and that release of energy, I guess, and I'll quote the article that we're looking at, is 50 times the output of all the stars in the universe combined. But the energy wasn't released in the form of light or anything like that. It was just pure gravitational, fluctuation that just propagated in space.
Yeah, I guess the one thing I gathered, which is it's crazy, just how small they actually were. You think, oh, there's these big waves that are pulling everything together, but from what I understand, it has to be a very large mass to really have any sort of noticeable wavelength at all. Just like you said, these were many magnitudes greater than our sun. Maybe black holes might be the only thing at this point that we can kind of observe. What impact going forward is this going to have on science and what we think about space and physics at this point?
No, go ahead.
No, V, I think you've got more to say than I do.
Well, I mean, if nothing else, it's another confirmation of Einstein's relativity theories. I mean, they've been tested and retested so many times, and every single time they've proven to be correct. Um, to unimaginable accuracies, really. Um, and I guess these events where black holes merge in, or I guess black holes merge together happen quite often. Um, I guess in the article here it says that it happens once every 15 minutes, and we currently have two sites that can measure these gravitational waves, and I think there's a third one that's being built. Or I guess if we build a third one, we can actually kind of do a little bit of a triangulation and locate these things better in space. So I mean, it'll show us uh, more about the structure of space. How many black holes there are, where are they? Because they're hard to spot. I mean, they're black. You can't see them with any kind of optical telescope. You can see them, I guess, with radio telescopes and some other equipment, but they're, I guess, still hard to see. And if we have these instruments, um, I guess it's another tool in the toolbox for examining the cosmos and seeing what's where. And there may be other things that we can find out later on, not just from merging black holes, uh, but who knows? Maybe the galaxy clusters or something like that. Um, when they move through space, they may produce some of those, and maybe further down we can detect some of those.
I also think too, it, it it never fails to amaze me just how weird the cosmos is. Since Einstein came up with general relativity like 100 years ago, we've done several experiments to try to prove it, and it's proven to be accurate. Um, but we often think, at least I grew up thinking of gravity as an attraction between two objects, but really gravity has proven to be the warping of space. That's
Yes.
really difficult to get your head around. But
Hmm.
one of the things that I remember really surprising me was that the example that if the sun were to disappear, it would take approximately 8 minutes for the gravitational effect to hit the Earth the same speed as light traveling from the sun.
Yeah.
So there's no actual connection between the two masses. It's the warping of space. And
Exactly.
that is just mind bending to get your head around.
Yeah, a lot of those theories that Einstein came up with were very, very crazy on the surface. The faster you go, the slower time goes by. I mean, that's
Yeah,
insane.
insane.
Um, and there's also another effect that's really interesting that I don't know if any of you guys have heard. It's called frame dragging. So it's not only that the space is curved towards the massive object, but as Earth rotates, it actually drags that space around with it. So it
Really?
kind of twists it. Yeah. There was an experiment that they did called Gravity Probe B,
Hmm.
and they had to create these very fine spheres. They were the roundest objects ever created to unimaginable proportions, and they flew them out in space, and those spheres were spinning, and they had to look at how the axis of around which they spin changes with time. Unfortunately, there was some uh, unexpected, I guess, charges that were left on the sphere, and it affected things a little bit. So they had to do a lot of filtering and things like that of the data. But eventually, when it was all said and done, it again turns out that Einstein was correct, and this frame dragging effect is real. So they're weird theories that are very, very hard to comprehend.
Now, is it true, V, that we have a pretty good understanding of what gravity is, but do we really understand what space is? Is that still a
Mm.
mystery to us?
It's a mystery to me.
Yeah, me too.
A bunch of dark matter.
No, it's trippy. Like, what exactly are we? Is mass distorting? Yes, it distorts space, but what is that? I don't know. Maybe there's an answer for that, but I don't know what it is.
Yeah, that's a good question. I am not, you know, I'm good with science, but this is beyond my pay grade.
Chris, did you have anything to add to this topic, gravitational waves? Anything we've missed, or any other observations you've had?
I've just been thinking about how to respond to all this. So I think one of the things that Dee mentioned was the fact that, yes, all of the universe is essentially a giant pond. And so every bit of gravity in the pond is essentially creating either ripples in the pond or is at least exerting some sort of force onto the level of the water of the pond such that you can see a dimple. And said dimple is the result of gravity, which is the result of matter, which is the result of mass. And so when these things kind of move around on the surface of the water, they are dimpling its surface and causing nearby objects to go towards it, much like a whirlpool, so to speak. So that's kind of where we're getting to a couple of the topics that we've been mentioning lately. The frame shift kind of plays into that too. I think that's what you said. Frame shift, frame delay,
frame dragging.
dragging. That's what it is. Yeah. Thank you. So frame dragging is essentially if you put a spatula into a bowl of pudding and then proceed to stir it, you will notice that it's actually kind of dragging the pudding along with the spatula as the spatula is going in a circle. And it's not the best example, but it's at least showing that there's some effect of the spinning of that spatula on the area around it, because the whole of the universe is essentially a fabric of space and time. And the space and time gets manipulated by gravity. And so gravity can kind of be that spatula that's manipulating space and time around it, which is why you have the effects of planet Earth and the sun and of black holes, of course. So it's cool about Einstein because he basically stated a number of things, of course, but his most famous equation, E equals mc squared, essentially showed that energy is mass accelerated at the speed of light. Squared, of course. But what it showed was that when you manipulate the equation around, energy can be converted to mass, and mass can be converted to energy. They are one and the same, energy and mass. It's just that if you take mass and accelerate to the speed of light, it becomes pure energy. And so mass is literally held to the speed limit of the speed of light. Anything that has mass can never go faster than the speed of light. And that was one of the really cool things that Einstein showed, getting at the point that V brought up as far as time slowing down to compensate, to make sure that the speed limit is held on any mass that's trying to go the speed of light. Time itself will slow around that gravitational object to help maintain c, essentially, the speed of light. So the cool part about quantum technology is that we're starting to see that at the quantum level, for some reason, things that don't particularly have mass per se can somehow break that limit. Don't know how that works, but anything that does have mass cannot possibly go faster than the speed of light. So that's kind of a cool little side effect there.
Well, there's another very cool thing that I was just thinking about that is, further mind bending. So let's say, I am traveling at 0.9 times the speed of light, which is allowed. It's almost the speed of light, but not quite. Now, let's say somebody's traveling towards me at the same speed. and say we both have a couple of flashlights and we shine them towards each other. Well, the two light beams are not going to all of a sudden travel at 1.8 times the speed of light with respect to each other. They'll still travel at below the speed of light with respect to each other, which is very, very strange. It doesn't matter in what direction you're traveling. Light will never travel more than the speed of light with respect to you. Doesn't matter where it's originating from, how fast that thing is moving. It's always the same. And those things are very, very strange and not intuitive at all.
Which is really interesting when you think about it in terms of just like walking towards your refrigerator in the kitchen. Time is actually slowing down for you at an infinitesimal amount compared to the fridge, which is stationary in your frame of reference. So even on a very small scale, it's happening, not necessarily at super high speeds.
Sure.
So just really fascinating.
And
Does
there's
this
other
make anyone else's brain hurt?
And there's other strange effects too. So let's say we're in a theater and you're sitting on the front row and I'm sitting on the back row. The light that's emitted from the stage hits your eyes first, it hits my eyes sometimes later. But so the time slice that I perceive as now is not the same time slice that you perceive as now. What I see is happening on the stage is not what you see is happening on the stage. And so there's all kinds of mind-bending things that surround all that.
And funny enough, Spaceballs actually kind of covered that to some degree. It was, never mind. Mel Brooks, he's kind of ridiculous, but it's funny how he delves into some very advanced topics, but does it in a very comical and ridiculous way that you would never imagine in your life.
I think Spaceball does that for several different topics, doesn't it?
Yes.
So now, do the discovery of gravitational waves, do they change or any scientists thinking, theorists thinking on whether or not time travel is possible?
I don't know. Well, I mean, people knew that gravitational waves existed; they just hadn't been confirmed. But I don't think that changed anything about time travel. It's still very much not possible, other than in the forward direction, at different rates depending on your speed, I guess.
Mm.
Although it would be kind of
Right.
cool.
So, Interstellar is still we don't really know much about that per se.
You talking about the movie?
Yes.
But it was in the movie. We should know everything.
Yeah. It had a lot of very accurate things. So it may turn out that they were on to the right thing as far as predicting a way to time travel. But we're not quite there yet.
Now, didn't they do an experiment that basically proved that it was possible, at least from interstellar terms, where they took two atomic clocks, one was on the Earth and another one went up in a jet and like circumnavigated the Earth or something like that, and they brought the clocks together and one was off by like a nanosecond or something like that, showing that time had actually slowed down for that clock that was moving at a higher speed. Is that
right? But both jets were moving forward in time, just at a slightly different rate. None of them went back in time.
Right, not back in time, but it would feel like you're moving forward in time if you were the person or object moving at a higher speed. Correct?
It would feel like you're moving slightly slower in time. I guess that would be the end effect, not so much.
Gotcha.
It would feel like you wouldn't feel any different.
Right.
You always feel as time is, ticking at the same rate, but with respect to other people, it'll be ticking at a different rate.
Yeah, the time dilation effect. It's like anyone who's not traveling, if you're traveling closer to the speed of light than they are, you'll basically stay the same as far as they're concerned while they age. And if you ever stop traveling at the speed of light, you'd be like, hey, why are you all older?
Right.
Yeah. What I find funny is that it doesn't matter what direction you're traveling in. Like, it feels like it should matter, but it doesn't. There's no preferred direction.
Yeah, it's all about velocity, not direction.
Yeah, but the cool thing is actually when you think about it, okay, so you're traveling at some high speed, but with respect to you, you could see it as if the other person is traveling at that speed. So who, for who does time slow down? Um, and it has to do with who experienced acceleration, like
Hmm.
who accelerated.
Oh, that's interesting.
Hence,
Yeah.
hence the meaning of Einstein's theory of relativity. Everything is relative
Gotcha.
to one another.
Yep.
Now, what happens if you spin in place really fast?
Ooh,
You
I
get
have
really
no
dizzy.
idea. Well, technically, let's say you stretch
All
your
right,
arms, and your arms are traveling at some crazy speed. I don't know. Now we're getting off into the
I'm sorry, that was my fault.
All right, guys,
Let
let's
science
move on
nerds
to
talk about those kind of things.
a little bit more of a lighter subject. Gravity waves are a bit much for some people. This week on the FreeThought Fort Wayne Facebook page, one of the members had posted a sheet that they received from their medical professional. Did you guys see this? Where the doctor asked the patient to circle their denomination of oddly it was Christianity. I don't think I remember seeing any Buddhist or Muslim or Hindu or anything. Did you guys see this?
No.
When was
Crazy.
that?
Yes,
I'm
I
sorry,
did.
guys.
I did see that.
But do you think that when you go to the doctor, if they know that you're a Baptist, that they can give you a better care?
Well, I hope not.
Yeah.
I got the impression it was for mainly being able for the care workers to be able to be sensitive to your particular beliefs, which if that is the case, that's kind of a higher level of service and customer service. But it just depends on how that information is used.
Yeah, like Jehovah's Witnesses don't accept blood transfusions. It'd be
Now,
kind
is
of like
there
that.
a slot for
Yes.
non-believers or a checkbox?
No, I actually, if I remember correctly, there was maybe an agnostic, but there was probably 20 to 30 different denominations of Christianity, be it Brethren or Friends, which I have not previously heard of. But yeah, a very wide range of Christian beliefs, but not any other world belief other than that.
Yeah, that's right. I did see that. Yeah. I think there was another box at the bottom that said the cursed and damned. I'm not sure.
Is that the one that you checked, Christopher?
No.
Yes.
Well, it seems like it could get awfully complicated, especially if somebody's not included and they're very sensitive to that. Does that like draw lawsuits or something like that? How many different religions are there out there?
Oh, hundreds. I mean, I just thought it was crazy that they had to include every single sect. I guess there's
Yeah.
What practical difference is there between yeah, Lutheran and Episcopal as far as how it pertains to your medical care?
Excuse me, doctor. I'm second Episcopal, please.
Excuse me, sir. When you check my reflexes, you must start with my left knee and not my right knee.
Oh, how many people are we going to offend with that?
Oh, I don't know. All right, moving on. We also this
We mean
past
it in a
week.
good way. We're making.
Our goal here is not to offend. We're just broadening perspective.
And we're having some fun with it.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So moving on. Also this week, celebration of Darwin Day. Did anyone do anything special for International Darwin Day this year? Nobody. It's not. It's not a holiday that everyone wakes up in the morning and celebrates the wonders of evolution.
No. I
Yeah.
look up when I wake up every day and look in the mirror. I pretty much celebrate that.
Did you see a big gorilla staring back at you?
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, I tried to get my kids the new book series, the first one of the new book series that's coming out, Tiny Thinkers, I think it's called. It was Charlie and the Tortoise.
Yes, I remember hearing an interview with that author. They had quite a few different science and evolutionary based children's books, which is great.
Yeah, the first one is Charlie and the Tortoise, and another one about Carl Sagan, and the guy with the fractals, I think is another one. I can't remember his name now.
Yeah. Oh, what is his name?
Charlie in the Fractal Factory.
No.
I want to say like something Owski. Totally wrong. You know, one
I
thing,
have no clue.
would you guys agree with me? I don't know. I personally think that Charles Darwin, the theory of evolution, is probably the largest and maybe the most underrated discovery of a scientist or theory. I mean, it's still in the process of changing humanity dramatically. The implications of it, apart from creation, are just staggering, really, the more I think about it. And its implications for how humans live their lives and society in general and culture I think, are vast.
Well, and just the understanding of what can happen when you have a long period of time and a small change that's this constant change in how much they can transform not just a life but any kind of system out there. Um, that's kind of builds on top of that idea. Only you have half of the people in the U.S. and many other countries not even believing that this theory has actually been confirmed.
Which is kind of crazy considering how large agriculture is in the United States, and that most of the pesticides and the type of seeds they plant are combating evolution. Where one one strain of weed will adapt and kind of maybe not evolve so much, but it will change to its surroundings, and we have to figure out a new way to keep it from spreading or to not feed it or to starve it. And that happens every year where you have to have a different say let's put Roundup on our field this year, and then next year the weeds don't react to it, and so you have to try something else. It's crazy. It's so observable on a small scale, but then if you look over time, even to what Darwin observed till now, it's really interesting stuff.
Yeah, and it's
Yes.
not just. Oh, go ahead.
Sorry. Yeah, so I was just going to say one of the things I actually test my students on is the fact that evolution operates on the level of population. So only populations of organisms and above can evolve. Therefore, an organism itself really can't evolve. It either dies or survives. Those are the only two options. And so the only way that natural selection can operate is on the variation among the individuals that already exists. So if you have a collection of weeds that are more and less susceptible to Roundup, then yeah, you're going to have directed evolution towards, or that favors the individuals that are more likely to, or more resistant or less susceptible to Roundup and will survive and will produce more offspring. And if they don't already have that variability in the population of weeds, then that population of weeds will never adapt to the Roundup. So the only way that evolution can happen is if those mechanisms are already in place, if that mutation is already present in the population. And so that's a problem that we see with endangered species, is that their population is so small, they don't have much genetic variability. So they don't have much ability to adapt to their environment. And so they're much more likely to die out than much more common species that are not on the verge of extinction.
Is it true, Christopher, that evolution happens quickly? I think I've been presented with the different ideas, and I'm not quite sure what to make of it. One is that it changes slowly over time, and then also that there's giant leaps in evolutionary advancements. I don't know if that's the right terminology, but maybe the environment changes dramatically all of a sudden, and then so you have changes in the fossil record that happen quickly in our records, or does it happen both ways?
So that was a really cool thing about comparing Einstein and Darwin, is the fact that really both of them were brought up in an environment that the universe is steady and that things happen either the things either not happen at all or they happen at a continuous, steady pace. Those are the only two options for people back in the day. And they didn't understand this concept of punctuated equilibrium, which basically talks about how there are those sudden jumps all of a sudden. All of a sudden a meteor hits the Earth and annihilates a bunch of crap, a bunch of species. So then all of a sudden we have this huge evolutionary opportunity to explode into speciation of a bunch of different species, filling all these different niches that are now left absent. So we kind of see that in evolution, as far as what Darwin was thinking, is that we don't have just this steady pace of evolution. Instead, we have steady pace of evolution broken up by these huge events. These huge events of extinction followed by speciation. So some organisms, the dinosaurs, for instance, all of those go extinct. And that leaves room, a bunch of niches available, ecological niches available, that can be filled by other animals, which just so happen to be us, mammals. So we filled all of those spaces that were left absent by the dinosaurs. And that was a punctuated equilibrium event that resulted in our steady evolution to what we are now.
But Chris, let's clarify. When we say the short periods of rapid change, those short periods aren't like 100 years or 1,000 years. Those are much, much longer period. They're short on evolutionary timescales and not on, human life timescales.
Yes. So one of the other things I try to emphasize to my students is that people often hear these terms microevolution and macroevolution, and people sit here and say, well, there's a lot of evidence for microevolution, which is to say that, oh yeah, we see a population of organisms that adapts. We see a bunch of weeds that adapt to Roundup. And that's microevolution, okay. But we never watch that weed develop into a flower. And that's macroevolution. We never see macroevolution. It's like, well, the problem that I have with that is that you're kind of talking about things that are on two different time scales. So yes, absolutely. Time scales are very important because when we're talking about evolution, we can almost talk about gradations in color. All right. So if you're messing around on your computer and you have color values in front of you and you want to start messing with them, you have a scale of 0 to 255 on all your 3 color values. Can't even remember what they are now. What is it? Red, yellow, blue, something like that. But you have three major colors that pretty much result in all the other colors on the color spectrum. And you can change that value from 0 to 255. And so the question is, at what point, when modifying those numbers one by one, at what point does red become purple? Right? So you're talking on a scale of 0 to 255. At what point does that become pink? At what point does it become orange? When can you say that it is? So microevolution is essentially changing that number by 1. Macroevolution is when you start changing those numbers by 10 or 50, and you start resulting in very, very large leaps of changes in the organisms because you're changing the scale of time.
Interesting.
I think the first time I ever heard of micro and macroevolution was listening to dear old Kent Hovind. I'm pretty sure everybody here has heard of Kent Hovind.
No.
No?
Yeah.
No, never. Well, maybe, but I don't remember.
Seriously?
Sorry.
Wow.
Sorry, V. I think you're in this on your own.
Wow. So Kent Hovind
However, I did just
is...
Google him.
Enlighten us.
A American Christian fundamentalist, evangelical, and tax protester.
Yes. He was in jail for tax evasion. Of course, he doesn't believe. Okay. I was gonna go a little political there, but I don't want to.
Stay on point, V. Stay on.
I'll stay on point. I'll stay on point. Okay, he is very annoying, and he can speak in ways that it will make you question your own name. Like if you are sure of your name, he can speak at a speed and say things that will make you question everything. He is very good, very slimy, very slick, very fast on his feet. He'll throw these things at you at rapid succession, so you can never answer his arguments. And I mean, typical creationist tactics there. But yeah, he was the first person I ever heard talking about micro and macro evolution and talking about different kinds of evolution, as in stellar evolution and biological evolution and chemical evolution and all these different evolutions, which I'm not they're not official definitions of anything really. I don't think in true biology we really distinguish between micro and macro evolution, or that chemists worry about chemical evolution. Those sound rather nonsensical to me. But yeah, he was the first person I ever heard of bringing up those specific terms, and I think a lot of the origins of those kind of things are in creationism and people trying to confuse people on evolution and other scientific theories.
Yeah, don't get us started on the young Earth creationists.
Kent Hovind is a young Earth creationist, although he is not a flat earther. I heard him. Yes, no, no, no. I heard him debunk flat earthers at one point in time. He heard of the recent kind of peak in interest around the world in flat earthers as a result of what was it, that one rapper that came out?
B.O.B.
B.O.B. Yes, yes, yes.
Yeah,
He
him
came out
and
as
Neil
flat.
deGrasse Tyson got into it.
Yeah, that was pretty awesome. But I think Ken Hovind responded to that and kind of did a whole debunk. So he pretends like he's a little bit sciencey. Like he'll say things like, "Oh, I taught high school science for 15 years." Well, not really. When you start digging into it, it's all embellished and made to sound like more than it actually is. He supposedly has a PhD from, I think it was something called Patriot Bible College, which if you look at the Google Earth picture, it's basically a double wide trailer.
Right.
The most accredited institution.
Yes,
What do
yes.
they call
yes.
those? A diploma mill or something?
It's even worse than that.
Yeah. I can't imagine what is that like? Listen, guys, when God created the earth 6,000 years ago, he made it round. You guys are ridiculous. I can't imagine how silly that sounds.
Well, I think he talked about stars and how far away they are from Earth and the rotation of them, and I don't know. He somehow tied it into that. I'm not. I don't remember exactly. I would love to be a fly on the wall in a creationist science class. That would be just amazingly interesting experience.
Well,
Good. Yeah. It goes
speaking of-
Yeah. Sorry, go. Sorry, Drake.
Oh no! Speaking of creationism and young Earthers, have you guys heard the updates for Ken Ham's biggest possible achievement, the Ark Park, where he's building I'm assuming a scale model of the of Noah's Ark, and it's gonna have a big amusement and all that. Have you guys heard any details about that?
Yeah, it's the Ark Encounter.
I don't really pay attention to
Wow.
that stuff.
Well, it was brought up to me. If you listen to the Thinking Atheist, he actually, Seth Andrews had some people on to kind of talk about it. And what's going on is he's actually getting huge tax breaks for building that. And basically, what they do is they give him tax breaks in hopes that they will do well enough to pay the city back. So if they spend billions, or excuse me, hundreds of thousands and $1 million to get that up and going, and it's all a big failure, then it turns around on the taxpayers to pay that back.
Oh, wow.
Interesting. I'm sure
Well-
if it fails, it could at least be a very nice condominium complex.
It'll be a Walmart supercenter in about 5 years.
Now that I would visit it then.
I've thought about actually going to visit that creationist museum, but I somehow would feel awful about financially supporting that endeavor.
From
But
what
it
I
would be
understand,
fascinating.
it's free on Christmas Eve. So if you wouldn't want to give your financial support, you can go when it's free. And although I think Christmas Eve may be the worst time from a humanist standpoint to go, but hey, you kind of you take what you can get.
But then again, you could go. It'd probably be flooded with a bunch of atheists and people like that who don't actually want to pay.
Yeah, that'd be weird. The one day of the year that you're not in the minority.
At the Creation Museum. I can think of better things to do than to travel all the way down to that.
It's in Kentucky, right?
Yes.
And there, did you guys see the? I think there's some billboards on 69 for it now.
Really? Wow.
For the Creation Museum, yeah. I think it's for the Creation Museum. Yeah.
Can only be one.
If I remember, I don't know. I could be wrong, but I think it was for the Creation Museum. I think it was just a big camel, and there was something else other than the camel on there.
Did you say camel?
Camel, yes.
Okay, like with a hump on its back, camel?
Yeah, it's a 2-hump camel, I believe, that they have on there.
Did they bring Joe Cool out of retirement?
I don't know who that is.
It's the camel.
You don't remember Joe Cool? He was the cartoon mascot for Camel cigarettes for many years until they found that kids find that pretty appealing to see a cartoon selling death sticks.
Cartoon selling death sticks. Wow.
So 3 hours and 20 minutes from Fort Wayne to the Creation Museum.
Awesome.
Yeah, it's just on the southwest side of Cincinnati.
You guys have a great time. I think I'm just going to surf the web.
FreeThought carpool.
Yay!
We're gonna rent a charter van or charter bus.
Yeah.
Let's get matching T-shirts.
Oh man,
There you go.
that bright neon like highlighter color.
We should all wear big shirts that say "American Atheist."
I don't know. I'm still unsure. I don't know. We'll see how this Open Secular Day comes around this year.
Open Secular Day? What is that?
Yeah, that's a kind of. I think it's in March. Correct me if I'm wrong. Anyone who knows, but Open Secular Day is kind of when you just come out and say, "Hey, this is me. I'm secular. Let's be counted," and kind of show people that they know someone who's not religious. So it's not an alienation for people. They have something to look at and say, "Hey, that guy's an atheist too." It's okay to not have religion in your life.
That sounds like a great idea. Unfortunately, as I stated in the first show, I can't really come out because of my work situation. I mean, one of the guys at work today had a Bible in his desk. And so I know there's a lot of people that are really hardcore believers, and I cannot afford to screw up the relationship with my coworkers. So unfortunately, I kind of have to stay in the closet. That's why I'm going V. I mean, my family knows. But
Completely understand.
It's just that's a very sad narrative to have to resort to that. I hate that.
To stay in the
something
closet?
that really needs to. Yeah, it's something that really needs to change. Where it's more acceptable to be gay than it is to be atheist. That's a problem.
Oh yeah, I've heard a couple studies where they say that atheists are the least trusted people. They'll take a rapist or a murderer for their word before they will an atheist. It is sad.
That is so silly. God, it's so silly.
I will never understand that.
No, that's funny because I've known plenty of religious people, superstitious people, and I would say if I were to compare apples to oranges, if that's a good way to describe it, most of the atheist people or agnostic live by a higher morality than the religious people that I know, which was probably going to offend a ton of religious people, but definitely a higher morality because it's built on reason and logic instead of the dictates of some superstition.
Well, the other problem is that a lot of people are living for the next life, not this life. And that's a problem.
Yeah, that's very true. Jeez.
I find that rather sad.
It is sad.
Yeah.
It's kind of thinking like we already have Mars colonized. So, when the Earth is gone and decrepit, then we can just move on and go live our lives on Mars and everything's cool.
It does pain me personally though to sit here and accept that all those teenagers that were sitting here saying, YOLO, you only live once.
Right.
Well, they have a point.
Yeah, they
Yeah,
do.
but yeah, I don't
Annoyingly,
know if
yes.
but a lot of them are still, believers, and
Right.
so they kind of mean it, but not really.
Well, people don't really want to follow that logic through, and I don't think a lot of people want to follow their logic through to its end. So I don't know. I think it's quite possible secular points of view may always be a minority, at least well thought through secular points of view.
Thinking may
Yeah.
be a rare thing.
Yeah,
Yes.
The
maybe.
Socratic method.
Yep. Unfortunately, prepare for a world that may be like that.
On a
Inevitable.
side note, Openly Secular Day was on April 23rd last year, and from my just brief research, I did not see that they have one out yet scheduled for this year. But their thing was take the pledge to tell one person, just tell one person that you're secular. So maybe we can get something together for this year, something local, even if there's not a national day for it.
Well, I was
That'd be
going to say,
good.
how does that compare to Ask an Atheist Day? Do you know?
It might be possible that they coordinate those on the same time. But yeah,
Okay.
I've heard of that where churches invite an atheist or two to come to the congregation and tell their story and answer questions. And that's something I've been interested in doing, though the courage isn't always behind that. But I think that would be a great thing, especially from a humanist standpoint, to kind of share those viewpoints and kind of gain that trust and not see us as the rapists and murderers and hell spawns.
I think it'd be nice to have a little bottled version of Victoria that we could just walk around everywhere.
Well, last year we actually had a Ask an Atheist Day. We set up a table at IPFW, and people came by and talked to us. I was hoping, that students would be a little more engaged than they were, but I think it was still a good day. We were there, and Victoria was there. I think they're. I want to say that the press was there, and I want to say that was one of
Yes.
the first interviews she did. Yeah.
I was
Yes.
curious how that went. Did you guys sit there at a table, mostly just watching people walk by, or was there much engagement?
Yeah, it was mostly watching people walk by.
Yeah.
Like he said, there was press there. They did record some interviews. It was interesting. We did have one. Luckily, there was only one guy who was remotely confrontational the whole day, and he basically came up to the table and drew a circle on the table. And it's like, this is a circle where you're thinking. You need to start learning to think outside of the circle. I felt that was rather ironic.
Yeah, that is ironic.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. Wow.
Here's one book that you devote and keep all your values to. There's your circle.
Oh, I want to do that if that ever comes up again. I'm hoping
Yeah.
there's a bunch of confrontational people. How entertaining would that be?
Yeah, he was kind of hostile about it though. It was a little touch and go. But it was funny because actually later in the day when we had to move the table because it started raining, he came up to the table while we were inside, and he was like, "Yeah, I'm sorry for kind of being a jerk earlier." But still, there's a circle that you're thinking. And it's like, okay.
Right.
I know that we've discussed this. There are great resources for street epistemology, which goes back to, once again, the Socratic method of, oh, hey, why do you believe what you believe? If you believe this, then why do you believe that someone else is wrong when, they have the same family factors, the same geographical factors, the same faith that you do. Let's get down to that. Let's unpack it and see really where the truth lies.
What was that YouTube channel again?
His name is Anthony Magnabosco.
Yeah, that is wonderful. Very entertaining.
Yes, and that's a hard last name to spell, but I'm sure if you just search street epistemology, you will find that he's one of a few that does that. He live streams. He's down in Texas on the campus. He's a student there, and he just talks to anyone who will listen. He does 5 minutes at a time. It usually goes longer because the conversation just kind of pulls it that way. But definitely encourage anyone to look that up. And he talks to a wide range of people, from Christians, of course, to Hindus, pagan. I remember he even does talk to some atheists, to make sure that they're, maybe not make sure, but because he's not from a standpoint of trying to tell anybody what's up, but let's figure out why you believe that, and if those points are valid. If you know the truth, I want to know the truth as well. So let's discover that.
Does he voice his opinion, or does he ask questions mainly?
He's very
He's a true skeptic. He's a true skeptic.
He's a skeptic. He will give his opinion, or he will tell them how he feels, usually towards the end of the conversation. He doesn't want that usually to sway them one way or the other. So he'll let them speak. He doesn't want to put any words in their mouth. He doesn't want to give them any impressions that here's what I'm looking for you to say. So he'll let them speak and get that out, and then afterwards, if they're curious, he'll also share his thoughts. But then he also gives them a business card at the end too, and says, "Hey, here's my email address. If you have any questions, send me an email. I'm always out here. If you'd like to talk again, I'd love to continue our conversation." So it's something where he keeps it open. He doesn't close any doors. Always tries to build those relationships up.
That's interesting. I haven't encountered many of those kind of channels or podcasts or any of that.
Well, to plug the FreeThought Facebook page, I will I will post a video or two of his, and we can share, and maybe it's something that we can kind of look into for a future atheist on the street day or something.
Yeah, it's very good. I would say after about 10 interviews, you're like, okay, same old story. People are caught in their loop in their mind, and they can't break free. But it's very educational and entertaining. At least the first several interviews that I saw. Well worth it.
If anyone wants to get in touch with the FreeThought Fort Wayne group, our email is fortwayneaha@gmail.com. You can call us and leave us a message at 260-376-2268. Our website is freethoughtfw.org, or our Twitter and Facebook, twitter.com/freethoughtfw or facebook.com/freethoughtfw.
And there's an event we've got coming up. What was that?
Wow, that's a good time to draw a blank. We have Dr. Kuznar at the library doing an event on human evolution, and I think the title is Passing On Your Genes.
Yes, a day to pass on your genes. That's going to be Thursday, February 25th at 7 p.m. That's going to be at the Downtown Public Library in Meeting Room A.
And V, I'm sorry, go ahead, V. I was going to say, can you tell us what FreeThought Fort Wayne is?
Well, it's a group. It's a humanist group. A group of freethinkers. We're members of the American Humanist Association, the only officially recognized chapter in Indiana of the American Humanist Association. And we're here to provide a little sense of community and support for people that don't have the traditional religious views, people that identify as humanists, atheists, or freethinkers.
All right, gentlemen, I think with that, we will call it an episode. Of course, thank you for your time, and we will see you all next week. Thank you.
That is all the time we have for you this week. This has been the Hoosier Humanist Hour. Be sure to check out FreeThought Fort Wayne on Facebook and Secular Fort Wayne on Meetup.com. Thank you for listening, and we hope your days are filled with logic, reasoning, and the eternal quest for knowledge.